Okay, so basically what I wanted to do with power meters being the topic and turbos being the topic and which power reads high and what doesn't read high and who's got what power and who's pushing out what power and what turbo. Just wanted to show what I'd done today was just like a 2 hour endurance ride. With going up some hills and maybe putting a few digs in on the power, just to see the variation in power and what you're getting between the two power meters. So this power here is basically the turbo data, which is a Tax Vortex wheel on. So when I'm doing my training, I use the controllable part as the turbo, and then where my power comes from is what I'm going to use out on the road. So whatever power I'm going to use out on the road, I've got a power meter which is a Quarq. So then I got the data from the Quarq as well, and wanted to have a comparison between the Quarq power and what the turbo power is. So basically recorded both sets of data just to see what the difference was. So when you're pretty much working out like an endurance zone as an overall. So for the 2 hours on the Quarq, the power sort of averaged at 195. Okay. We can also have a look at the normalized power was 199, so like pretty consistent throughout. Wasn't really like pushing, just trying to keep pretty consistent with my power and the majority of zone 2 or thereabouts. So normalized power, this is the Quarq, was 199, and the 2 hour peak or average is 195. Okay. Then we look at the turbo wheel on Tax Vortex. So this is what that is. So it was at 207, yeah, normalized to 11. So we're looking at, around about 10, 12 watts sort of difference there on the two. Okay, which is not like a massive amount. Yeah, you could say, that 10 watts is all the difference when you're doing an Ironman or something like that, but it's not like a massive amount that's going to make a big difference because your zone is like quite varied. There's like in between zones depending on whether it's 1 or 2, 3, 4 or 5. There's quite a range between those zones. So I'm not going to be like too bent up on 10 watt difference there. The issue comes is when obviously you're doing Zwift racing, you're pushing out bigger numbers, then the percentage becomes greater in terms of the variance on that turbo. So if you have a look, if we just go for, obviously it's going uphill and I put a few digs in. So if we just have a look at, for example, like the peak 10 minute here. So this is on the turbo Tax Vortex wheel comparison. So that peak 10 minute watts there. So 10 minutes is 248. So it was a hilly course, so we're going up a hill at some point. So 248. Then if we have a look at the Quarq, what's that pushing out 10 minutes? Is 225. So this is where the big difference comes, like a difference of like 20 watts. That's going to be quite massive compared to, being out on your turbo and then going out on the road. So if you're using the turbo's power and you've got a power meter, there's almost like no point. You've got to use the power that you're using out on the road on your turbo. So when you go to your pairing screen on your turbo, make sure you pair your power meter, and then the controllable is just the turbo, especially when you got a wheel on turbo, because that's where the difference is coming. And you can check this by going to your pairing screen. When you go to your pairing screen and you've got a power meter and you've got your turbo, you can have a look at the variance there, or just do a test like I've just done here, just an easy zone 2 with a couple of digs in certain power levels. So let's just have a look, just for argument's sake, any of the other peaks. So here, so this is the Quarq, say 30-second peak there at 296. Let's have a look at the Vortex, 30 seconds. So look at that variance there. That's even bigger. So you're looking at like 40 watts difference there, or just above. So it's when you excuse me, when you're pushing really hard, that percentage is a lot greater in the difference in the turbos. So yeah, in zone 2, hardly any 10 watts, not a difference, but at the peak 30 seconds, especially when you're doing these Zwift races and you're pushing really hard, this is where the massive changes in the power is going to come. So, it's just that advice of like, make sure you're calibrating your trainers, calibrating your power meter. And if you've got a power meter on the bike, that's what you should be using as your power on that turbo, whatever sessions you're doing, and not using the turbo power, because you're going to have a massive variance in the two. So, yeah, just a little experiment there just to show you the difference. Of what your turbo can push out if it's a wheel on. So even if it's direct drive and one of these turbos that only shows 1 or 2% variance, just have a look, see what the difference is just by doing an exercise like this. I could have done a 50-minute session or whatever, but I think picture paints 1,000 words by doing 2 hours, because there's not much variance there. So you've got the turbo at 207, and then you got the power meter at 195, so not 12 watts, nothing there. Also, what was interesting is just the temperature change. So I was in my conservatory, sort of starting at about 13 degrees indoors in the conservatory, and then it sort of like ended up touching 18 sort of degrees. So that'll have effect on the accuracy of your power meter as well.